Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, February 11th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, today, February 11th, of course, is known as the feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, because it recalls the first apparition of Our Lady to Saint Bernadette. It was on February 11th, 1858, that Bernadette Soubirous, at the age of 14, went to gather firewood with her younger sister and friend. When they came to the canal near the River Gave, the other two girls just waded through, but Bernadette decided to stop to take off her stockings. And as she recounted to the police chief 10 days later, I heard a very loud noise in the hedge of a Machiavel grotto. I looked that way and saw the bushes moving, and behind them something white. I looked a moment, and then I knelt and prayed. That one smiled at me and vanished into the grotto. Over the next 5 months, Bernadette saw the lady, that she simply called that one, Aquero, at the grotto 17 more times, and she was accompanied by even more onlookers as the word spread. Interestingly enough, no one else saw the apparition, but many were convinced by the girl's radiant, angelic countenance while in ecstasy. On February 25th, Bernadette was told, "She told me to go drink of the spring." Our Lady indicated some bare ground near the grotto where Bernadette dug with her hands. But as she recounts, "But there I only found a little muddy water. At a fourth attempt, I was able to drink. She also made me eat the bitter herbs that were found near the spring, and then the vision left and went away." The 300 witnesses were disconcerted to see the angelic face covered with mud and grass. But on March 1st, Bernadette's friend Catherine Latapie regained the use of her dislocated arm after plunging it in the spring, which was now a torrent. It was the first of many healings at Lourdes. On March 25th, Bernadette asked the lady's identity. She lifted her eyes to heaven, joined her hands as though in prayer, and said to me, "Que soy era Immaculada Concepção," incorporating into the uneducated girl's Pyrenean dialect the terminology of the papal dogma issued 4 years before. I am the Immaculate Conception. Saint Bernadette then became a Sister of Charity at Nevers, where her incorrupt body is now enshrined. So we might think, well, what else could you have on such a fantastic day? Well, the Abbot Orsini tells us that it's also the celebration of Saint Mary of Luque, near Calais, France. This monastery of the Order of Premonstratarians, those guys, was founded in the year 1131 by Robert, Lord of Luque. Not a whole lot more information. But then also, interestingly enough, we also celebrate Nuestra Señora de la Cortés Acariagua Portuguesa in Venezuela, because it was on this day that an image appeared in the bark of a tree in 1702. It's like Our Lady of the Trunk. So what is the story here? Well, it was in February of 1702 that Margarita had gone to complete a vow she had made to Our Lady of Coromoto in thanksgiving for having restored the health of her son. And so Margarita went with her son to the shrine of Our Lady of Coromoto. They, made their thanksgiving, and then as they were coming back, they stopped at a tree, tied up their donkey, and decided to, rest in a hammock that was there. So after a little bit of time, the boy realized that the donkey was frightened. And so he's like, okay, well, what's going on? And he saw there was this brilliant light on the tree trunk, right? So the two of them drew near, and they noticed that the trunk had, right there, just like perfectly clear, an image of Our Lady holding the child within her arms. Okay? So Margarita cut it out of the tree with a knife, and then put it nicely together in a cloth. So then, because of, this sort of story, we're not entirely sure what day the apparition took place, but they think that it's probably February 11th of 1702, which is why they celebrate it today. So they were going to continue their way and just go back home when all of a sudden the donkey just started taking off. He just ran. And so the poor group, the mom and her son, had to walk all the way back to the town. But interestingly enough, when the donkey ran, he ran to the door of the church, right? And so the Capuchin priest there, the pastor of the church, wondered, well, whose animal is this, right? And so he sent one of his workers to go and look around, and this worker found Margarita, who had, walked back to town. And so she went to go get her donkey. And in the meantime, the donkey had gotten inside of the church, and Margarita couldn't get him to get up or to move. So why was that? Well, of course, there's the image inside, which was placed in the church, and now actually the image of Our Lady of the Trunk has its own cathedral. So that is what we're celebrating today, February 11th, in the Marian world. For today's Marian meditation, taken from the book by Father Ildefonso Villar, we read the conclusion, the second point of meditation 36, which, as we said, these are all reflections on the words of the Magnificat. And here we'll consider the words, "He has driven the proud astray in the conceit of their hearts." Here you have another token of the might of his arm. His omnipotence shines forth in his works of mercy and bounty, but also in his works of justice. And just as his mercy embraces the humble, so does his justice reach the proud. Our Heavenly Mother would certainly recall the difference between her exaltation to the throne of God, in order to be the Empress of Heaven, and the miserable fall of Lucifer from the heights of heaven to the abysses of hell. She was exalted for her humility. He fell on account of his pride. Note this expression, the proud in the conceit of their hearts. She is clearly referring to internal pride, not to the external, which is rather a form of vanity. The interior pride is more refined. Outwardly, it appears humble, whereas inwardly the pride of heart and mind is deeply rooted. And the worst of it is that this pride is so subtle that it penetrates to the most intimate recesses of our heart, almost unnoticed by us. Pay attention to the distinction between pride of mind and pride of heart. By pride of mind, we, firmly convinced of being right, stick to our own opinion and refuse to yield. We must always be right. We can stand no contradiction. We never give way. Pride of the heart is that accursed self-love which strikes deep roots in our hearts. Ask Our Lady to free you from such double pride of mind and heart, so that through her intercession we may escape that divine justice which, according to Our Lady herself, deals out such dire punishment to interior pride. For today's reading from The Admirable Heart of Mary by St. John Eudes, we read the conclusion of chapter 6, entitled Goodness and Providence of God Mirrored in the Admirable Heart of Mary. As we said earlier, these chapters, these little sections, are all inviting us to consider how Mary's heart is the perfect reflection of these perfections of God. Mary's heart is so merciful that she loves even those who hate her. Mary always renders good for evil because she willingly sacrificed her own beloved Son to save the reprobates who crucified him. Other fathers of the Church express the same thoughts and assure us that the almost boundless charity of the heart of Mary extends to all places, times, and things in general, through a most abundant communication and eminent participation of God's infinite goodness, and likewise of his divine providence. As this adorable providence governs and regulates all things created, from the greatest to the least, both in general and particular, so also does God's most powerful and merciful Mother, the Queen of the universe, bestow the affections and care of her royal heart on all things within her realm and subject to her rule. She leads all created things to the last end for which God has made them, namely the glory of his divine majesty. But her special care is the guidance of rational beings, above all of Christians, and most particularly of her own devout children, who strive faithfully to honor, serve, and imitate her. Her maternal heart protects and cherishes her devotees in a unique manner, having her eyes ever intently fixed upon them. She preserves and guards them as the apple of her eye, and assumes the guidance and conduct of their entire life and actions. She leads them by the hand in all their ways, removing from their path the obstacles and hindrances which might make them stumble or retard their progress. She obtains the assistance and the means whereby they will receive strength and advance more rapidly. She bears their soul in her arms and on her virginal breast through the dangerous crises where their peril is greatest. She assists them most lovingly in the dark passage from this life into the next world, protecting them valiantly from the efforts and snares of the enemies of salvation.
She receives their souls in her sweet and gentle hands at the moment of death, and lovingly folds them in her most charitable heart. She finally bears them upward to heaven with unutterable joy, and presents them with all-surpassing kindness to her beloved Son. If such is the miraculous goodness of Mary to those who love and venerate her, how can there possibly be any Christians who hold back from devotion to the center and principle of her benignity, her admirable heart? Praise, honor, and glory be forever to the Most High, who has thus caused the heart of this incomparable Mother to reflect to mankind the perfect image of his goodness and all-merciful providence.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.